Welcome to the Page by Page Book Club. I'm your host, Paige in Print, and I bring you weekly book club meetings wherever you get your podcasts. This week is a big one because we are talking about the Big Five. And what I mean by that is the Big Five book series that I think every romance reader should read. This is completely and totally personal opinion. My credentials are that I have read 300 romance books in the past year and a half, and I like to think that I have the Big Five down to a science. This book club meeting is for literally everyone. If you've read these series, great. If you are a longtime romance reader and haven't read these series, let's change that. And then if you're new to romance, boy, do I have an intro for you. The Big Five book series that I think all romance readers should read are Chestnut Springs by Elsie Silver, Windy City by Liz Tomforde, Playing for Keeps by Becka Mack, A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas, and The Edens by Devney Perry. And this is called the Page by Page podcast by Paige in Print. And so I, Paige, will be giving my opinion on this podcast. You're welcome to disagree, and we can still be friends. And even if you disagree with my Big Five, listen to the episode. I'm going to share my reasoning. With that being said, the honorable mentions are as follows. Lost and Found by Kathleen Cowles, Rebel Blue Ranch by Lila Sage, Boys of Tommen by Chloe Walsh, and the Empyrean series by Rebecca Yarros. I'll talk about those at the end. Today's episode is going to get into the nitty-gritty of those Big Five. The overarching reason that I chose these five series is that I feel as though they are a very, very good representation of the romance genre as a whole, as well as great representations of their respective subgenres. So let's start it from the top. Chestnut Springs by Elsie Silver. Chestnut Springs by Elsie Silver is a cowboy romance series set in rural Canada on a ranch. This is the Eaton family, which is about to get very confusing because the Edens is a series that we're going to talk about later on. So I'm going to try to pronounce as clearly as possible my T and my D's. 5 books in this series, and it follows the Eaton family and their close friends, Rhett Eaton, Kate Eaton, their friend Jasper, their friend Theo, and Bo Eaton. Chestnut Springs is going to always be my very, very first recommendation to a romance reader. I feel it is accessible. I think everybody loves a cowboy, and they're just quite frankly phenomenal. So let's do a rundown of Chestnut Springs series, book by book, and then I'll tell you what my favorites are. First book is called Flawless. It is the pink book. Flawless follows Rhett Eaton and Summer Hamilton. Rhett gets himself into trouble, right? Because he's kind of been in the press lately, but nothing too crazy. But he has a milk sponsorship. Yes, you heard me right. Just bear with me. Please hold. Rhett is a bull rider. That's why he has these sponsorships. So he's a professional bull rider, and he is caught on camera stating that he hates milk in the very first chapter. And that is bad PR, my friend. If you are sponsored by a milk company to be caught on camera saying you don't like milk. And so what ultimately happens is soon after that, he gets into a fight in the parking lot, and his image is less than stellar at the moment. And so his agent calls him in and is like, congratulations, you have earned yourself a babysitter. And that babysitter is going to be my daughter. She's going to spend the rest of the season with you, making sure that you behave, starting effective immediately. Well, he doesn't want a babysitter and she doesn't want to babysit him. So we get this really, really good, fun, hate to love dynamic. There's a huge difference, in my opinion, between enemies to lovers, dislike to love, and hate to love. We'll cover that in the enemies to lovers episode. But for right now, they're not true enemies to lovers. I wouldn't even say hate to love. I would say they dislike each other to loving each other. So Summer ends up spending her time following Rhett around for the rest of the PBR season. Yep, you guessed it. They fell in love. So that is the premise of Flawless. Book number 2 is Heartless. And Heartless is a fan favorite. Is it my favorite? No. And we'll talk about it. But Heartless is a fan favorite because our FMC and our MMC are absolute top tier. I feel like a lot of time in romance books, you get one lead carrying the weight of the book over the other and being kind of the standout character of the book. Well, Heartless does not have that problem in any way, shape, or form because our MMC is cowboy, single dad, grumpy, possessive Kate Eaton. And our FMC is the fiery, incredible, confident Willa Grant. Each of these characters are absolutely, completely, and totally beloved, and for good reason. So here's how this book goes. Willa is Summer from Flawless's best friend. And Summer convinces Willa to come to Chestnut Springs and spend the summer there. No real plans in mind, but just touch grass, if you will. And so Willa comes to Chestnut Springs. She's in the coffee shop. And in the coffee shop, she's digging around her purse, and what falls out of her purse but a pair of underwear. Yes, that happens in like the first chapter. And who but to pick it up but the grumpy single dad, Cade, who thinks that she's the most beautiful thing to ever grace this earth, but he's like, what a hot mess, because she just dropped her underwear in the middle of a coffee shop out of her purse. The story continues, and Cade is kind of in over his head. He is the foreman of the ranch that they live on, and he is working sun up to sundown and is having a hard time balancing it all. He needs a nanny. Well, you know where this is going. Willa's there for the summer, and why doesn't she help out? Well, because she's a hot mess, he says. Too bad. Live-in nanny mode activated. And the forced proximity, the spice, the banter. I mean, it is hard not to love. So if you like a grumpy, broody type of MMC, Cade Eaton is likely going to be exactly up your alley. And that is why Heartless is a fan favorite. This is where I want to take a moment to say that all of these series that I'm recommending, aside from ACOTAR, are interconnected standalones. So you could read them out of order if you wanted to. I don't recommend it because there is some crossover, but you can. So if one of these books sounds more interesting to you than the other, the option's on the table. Next, Powerless, the Purple Book. Powerless follows Jasper, who is a family friend and essentially a bonus brother of the Eaton brothers. He had a very, very difficult upbringing, and the Eatons took him in, and he has been effectively a brother to their family. And Sloane is the Eatons' cousin. It really isn't that incestual, but that's kind of the bit. Is like, oh, well, you're cousins, so you can't be together. And they're like, no, we're not cousins. But they are best friends. And she's a ballerina and he's a pro hockey player. It is still a cowboy romance, small town. All that is still at play, but she is in a horrific engagement. The guy, simply put, sucks. And so she's kind of grappling with that, and then is also, meanwhile, kind of deepening her friendship with her best friend and not cousin Jasper. And the feelings are there. And so they go on this road trip to make a delivery. And it is the forced proximity, only one bed of it all. So that is Powerless. Diving straight into Reckless. We have arrived at my favorite book in the series, and it's for one reason and one reason only. I, Paige, in print, am a certified Theo Silva girl. Hear me when I say, there's nothing I love more than the funny guy class clown with some depth and maybe a little emotional damage. There's nothing I love more. I will eat it up every time. It is my favorite MMC type, and Theo fits it to a T. He is the blueprint. And here's what happens. Theo meets Winter at a gas station. They're both fueling up. She thinks he's the cutest thing to ever walk this earth. But they don't talk. They just see each other from across the way. Then she is driving to visit her sister, Summer. Yes, their names are Summer and Winter, for a family dinner. She has been estranged from her sister because they are half-sisters, and her mom kind of pinned them against each other. They're finally reforming a healthy relationship after that has been kind of resolved throughout this series. Well, and then come to find out, they're both coming to family dinner at the Eatons. This is where the iconic line that you may have seen on any book social media comes from, where she's like, Rhett, call off your dog, because Theo is Rhett's bull riding protege. And so she says, Rhett, call off your dog. And then Theo barks. He legitimately says, woof. And that's where that iconic thing comes from. Well, after that dinner, they're staying at the same hotel. They have a one-night stand. From that night, Theo is like, I'm going to get my act together, and I am coming back for Winter Hamilton. He gives his phone to his manager or management company to take care of while he finishes it up, because he wants no distractions. He wants to have a successful season. Yeah. Well, Winter's pregnant, and she texts him multiple times. She calls him, please call me back. Nothing. And finally texts me like, I cannot get a hold of you. I am pregnant and it's yours. And keep in mind, the management has his phone, and management says, thanks for letting me know. Never tells Theo. Oh. So he is doing his thing on the PBR. And Winter's a doctor and is now, it is escaping me at the moment. I think Rhett and Theo are doing a charity rodeo in town, and she goes to support. She has a full-blown baby now. We are months down the road. Theo gets hurt. She's a doctor, so she goes to help him. He's injured. He has to stay in Chestnut Springs. He cannot continue on with the season. And he moves in to the place next door, owned by Jasper from the last book. And he sees this child, and the child apparently looks just like him. And he is like, I need you to tell me it's mine. And she's like, you've got to be kidding me. And he's like, no, I am not kidding you. And she's like, I told you it's yours. And he's like, what are you talking about? He has a literal conniption because he desperately wants to be a part of this family. It is so beautiful. I am obsessed with him. It is textbook Black Cat Golden Retriever. Winter is very true to her name. Well, cold isn't a great word. She is a product of her environment and her situations, and that has resulted in a sense of coldness from her. That is Reckless. Last but certainly not least, we get Hopeless. Hopeless is Bo Eaton's story. Bo is the brother of Cade and Rhett, and for all intents and purposes, Jasper. And Bo is former military. Bo was MIA in the military. He had a horrific accident that resulted in significant burning to his leg, and he is now home. And throughout the rest of the series, you're kind of hearing about his time in the military, but specifically, you do hear about him going MIA, I believe in Reckless. So he's home. He's dealing with quite a bit of PTSD from that, and he is just trying to reacclimate to society. Well, our FMC in this book is Bailey, and she is from the Eaton's rival family. It is total opposite sides of the track. Her brothers are scum of the earth, essentially, and she is trying to make a name for herself to get out of Chestnut Springs and to start fresh. And so she's a bartender, and this is an age gap romance. I can't remember the exact age difference, but keep that in mind. So it is also like very much an innocent FMC type thing where she's a bit inexperienced. So anywho, Bo is frequenting the bar that she bartends at. She's in a spot where she's being defined by her family's actions, and he's in a spot where people won't stop hounding him now that he's back from the military. And so he's like, you know what? You should pretend to be engaged to me. And then people will leave you alone, and people will leave me alone. And so they do. And then her brothers call it's a whole hoopla, and she ends up moving in with him. So there's a roommates element to this. And that is the end of Chestnut Springs. It is such a great cowboy romance. It's all set in this rural town, very much so everyone knows everybody, and I could not recommend it enough. I think that's a great place to start for new romance readers. I think it's a great place to return to if you haven't read it as a romance reader. Now we move on to the Windy City series by Liz Tomforde. Windy City is a sports romance series. We get hockey, basketball, and baseball. And quite frankly, no one is writing like Liz Tomforde is. She is completely and utterly beloved for a reason. The Right Move, the second book in the series, was the third book I read ever as a romance reader, and it stands the test of time. The first book in the series is Mile High, and this is a workplace forbidden romance because Xander's plays for the hockey team, and Stevie is a flight attendant for the hockey team, and there's no fraternization, right? But he's like, you're gonna fall in love with me, and she's like, I literally can't. He's like, too bad, you will. He's very much a reformed playboy. He's a hockey player, and so there's that forbidden element of it, the forced proximity, the workplace. We love to see it. However, the creme de la creme lies in The Right Move, the second book in this series. The Right Move is, I would say, one of the top romance books of all time. It is everything. Ryan Shea is the book boyfriend. Capital T, capital B, capital B. I talked about him when we were talking about Powerless, but his character is all about quiet love, acts of service, the ways you can love someone without having to be super loud about it. It is so refreshing. He is a walking green flag, and he is a pro basketball player. He's now the captain of his team. The general manager is not taking him seriously. He's not a family man. He's not a playboy by any means, but he's not a family man. And so he may be in need of a girlfriend. Well, that's kind of delivered to him on a silver platter when Stevie from Mile High's very best friend's engagement ends, and she needs somewhere to live. And Ryan has an extra room. So begrudgingly, he allows Indy to move in with him. So Indy does. And Indy is kind of Ryan's antichrist a little bit. Like, he's very tidy and clean. She's kind of all over the place. He's kind of neutral. She's bright color. And so she walks into his life. He ultimately she shows up to his basketball practice, and through that interaction ends up becoming his fake girlfriend. Well, it's the tale as old as time. They fall for each other, and it is completely and utterly stunning. So well done, perfectly spicy. I have no notes. If you're going to read anything, read The Right Move. Now, Ryan's upstairs neighbor's name is Kai, and Kai has a son. Kai's son was left on his doorstep, yes, as a young baby, and his mom does not want anything to do with him. So, Kai is now a single dad, and no nanny is good enough for Kai. He continues to fire nannies, but as the pitcher for Chicago's baseball team, that's not going to work. And so the coach's daughter shows up. And she is a pastry chef. She is the tippity top of her class pastry chef, but she's burnt out and tired of traveling. And so she shows up to where her dad is, who's the coach of this baseball team, and is like, I need the summer off. He's like, okay, well, while you're at it, could you nanny for Kai? Yeah. She ends up becoming their live-in nanny. The tension again. The forced proximity again. The sweet, sweet child. I love a kid in the book. They're just so cute. Kai wears glasses, so that should be a selling point. And it really is just beautiful. And Kai has a brother. Kai's brother's name is Isaiah, and Isaiah is obsessed. The athletic trainer named Kennedy. So we move on to Play Along, and Isaiah is very much so in the vein of Theo Silva, funny guy with a bit of depth to him. Nobody really takes him super seriously, but there's a little bit more to him. And Kennedy is very much in the vein of Winter, where she is a product of her circumstance and is a true black cat. And the two of them are in Vegas. I think you've seen this film before. They're in Vegas and, well, they drunkenly get married. And it's all over the tabloids. And so they can't call it off when they get back because there's a no fraternization rule between players and staff. But if they're serious and married, not just dating, maybe they could kind of slide by with that. And so it begins. And so this is a marriage of convenience romance. It is truly, truly such a fun read. I had the privilege of advance reading this book in July, and it was one of the highlights of my reading career. I love this book. I truly feel like everyone has a different favorite book from this series. While The Right Move is romance book perfection, I do think Play Along is my favorite simply because I adore Isaiah Rhodes. I'm nothing but consistent. The final book in this series is called Rewind It Back. It is not coming out until later on this year in May, so stay tuned for that. But it follows the star side character. In every single one of these stories, his name is Rio DeLuca, and I am so excited for this. He's been looking for love this entire time and hasn't found it, and it is his turn. It is his chance, and I'm so excited to read that book. So you can get caught up on Windy City now before that book releases. Next, let's go ahead and dive into the Playing for Keeps series by Becka Mack. This is a hockey romance series. We've done cowboys, we've done sports in general, but hockey is its own thing for romance readers. And to be honest with you, I'm actually not sure why hockey is the more popular sport. My assumption is that it's, quite physical, and so that's attractive. But I'm not sure why hockey is the most popular romance sports subgenre. Anywho, Playing for Keeps follows a hockey team. And the first book is about Carter and Olivia. Y'all, I want you to know I have no notes, by the way. I am pulling all of these synopsises out of my brain and all of these character names out of my brain. It's a vault in here. So, Carter and Olivia. Carter, playboy. He is a true golden retriever type. Not in the vein that Isaiah and Theo are, because they are light to cover dark. And Carter, to me, is more just true, pure, unadulterated golden retriever puppy sunshine. Carter is infatuated by Olivia, who is one of his teammates' wife's best friends. The second he sees her, he is locked in, and he is making it his mission to kind of shape up, stop being a playboy, and lock in for Olivia. I really like Olivia's character in this book. She is a strong first female FMC of a series. There's a very particular FMC archetype that comes out of first books and series, and I can't quite put a finger on it, but to me, it's kind of there's always their own spin on it, but it has to be the quintessential Hallmark movie lead. I feel like there's a very particular type of FMC in the first book, and then I think the second book in a series is almost always, the funny girl best friend of the first book's FMC. That is my favorite formula to a romance series. Okay. We digress. Carter fights for Olivia. There's some conflict there. And of course, they end up falling in love. I do not read books that do not have happily ever afters, by the way. I just don't. I like being happy. I like escaping the world. Let me live. So, anywho, Carter's little sister's name is Jenny, and Carter's teammate's name is Garrett. And Jenny and Garrett are now living in the same building. So enters Play With Me. Garrett's undeniably attracted to Jenny. She's a dancer. She's wrapping up her time in college in the city and trying to figure out what she's going to do with her career post-grad. And they develop an unlikely friendship that then develops into something more. But it must remain a secret because Carter will quite literally flip his lid if he finds out about them. Also, Jenny is quite guarded when it comes to particular areas of romance, and Garrett is extremely, extremely patient with her for that. This book, to me, is the most underrated in the series. In fact, I'm going to own up. I skipped this book and came back to it a year later for two reasons. The first is I was so excited to read Adam's story, which is the next book, Unravel Me. But the other is that I wasn't a huge fan of Garrett's character in Consider Me. I was wrong. I want to come on here and say that I was wrong, and I regret that. And justice for Garrett. That's no wrongdoing by Becka Mack either, by the way. That was a me thing. Like, as we've established, I am much more of the sweet golden retriever type MMC fan, and Garrett wasn't giving me that vibe at the time. So, anywho, highly recommend going back to that one if for some reason you skipped it. And we're going to move on to Unravel Me by Becka Mack. Unravel Me is Adam, the team's beloved goalie, and unfortunately, heartbroken goalie. His ex-girlfriend was cheating on him. Thumbs down, boo, hiss, boo, hiss. She's the worst. And that happens back in Consider Me. So you're kind of watching him start to heal and Play With Me. And then he gets his own love story in Unravel Me with the pink-haired, so cute single mom vet tech, Rosie. And they meet on the same walking path with their dogs and then have the same kind of like happenstance, meet cute type things where they finally start dating. But there's a problem. Adam does not tell her he's a hockey player. Uh-oh. So she's dating him, thinking he's just some Joe Schmo because he tells her he works in sports, but doesn't clarify that he is the sports. And so within the first act, actually, she discovers that he has been keeping that from her. Keep in mind, she's also a single mom. She's not necessarily one to date, but she really, really likes Adam, and Adam really, really likes her. And so that, I actually like the cadence of this book. I know that's sometimes a criticism of it. I like the cadence of this, where the conflict isn't in the third act. Like, at least he wasn't lying the whole dang time. Do I agree with lying? No. Am I still obsessed with Adam? Yes. He had been treated differently in relationships because of his status as a pro hockey player. So, do I blame him for what he did? Yes. Do I think he should have done it? No. But he's just a boy. Like, leave him alone. It's just a book. Oh, I have such a problem with that. Like, my husband and my mom will always be like, you know, it's just a book, right? And I'm like, I know, but I get so invested in these characters. The fourth book in the final installment that's out now is called Fall With Me. And this book is a Roman Empire book for me. Oh my gosh. Jackson is the team's enforcer and has never really been able to stay on a team for an extended period of time. He's been traded. He's kind of a liability as the enforcer. And so he is now on this team with these guys, and he is taking a vacation on their off season, and he is in some tropical location with a random girl from his gym because he didn't want to be alone. Well, the girl in the suite next door to him is on her honeymoon, except for she's on her honeymoon alone because the wedding has been called off. And Jackson hasn't been the best to his date, but also she was also kind of being a little bit a lot. So she ends up leaving. Jackson and Lennon, his neighbor, end up hooking up on their trip. They go their separate ways. Well, Lennon shows up as the team photographer, but a few weeks later. And then quickly her new apartment in town floods and she has nowhere to go, and she ends up becoming roommates with Jackson. This book has so much depth to it in a way that I was not expecting. Jackson's character was so beautifully done to me, and it kind of goes to show the grumpy, broody, playboy type guy might just have something going on, right? And Lennon was his perfect match. The cover features the Northern Lights, which is something Lennon has always adored, and Jackson makes that a priority in their friendship, turned roommates, turned friends with benefits, turned more. It really is great. Really great story. I listened to this one on audio, whereas I eyeball read the others. I highly recommend this. If you're watching, by the way, and not listening, and I keep looking off to the side, it's because I'm looking at these series on my bookshelves. So if you're wondering what I'm looking at. Also, we're only 2 episodes in, and we already upgraded the setup. The Page by Page book club, it's getting serious between you and me. This relationship's going to the next level. Anyway, Chestnut Springs, Windy City series, playing for keeps. This brings us to The Edens by Devney Perry. This is a romantic suspense series set in small town Montana, and it is so good. Oh my gosh. This is the perfect introduction series to someone looking to get into romantic suspense. We covered it in the last episode, but I am a romantic suspense girl. It's my favorite subgenre, and this is the perfect entry point into the genre, in my opinion. Indigo Ridge follows a couple who has a one-night stand, and she's in town because she's going to be the police chief. Yes, women in leadership roles, women in male-dominated fields. We love to see it. And he's a cowboy, and he thinks that she's just coming through town, and she thinks that he's just coming through town. Well, he's part of the town's most prominent family, the Edens. Their one-night stand turns into friends with benefits. She's also investigating a string of suspicious deaths that everyone has kind of swept under the rug. The suspense comes from that storyline. I really love this series. These two don't beat around the bush. When they develop feelings for each other, that's that. They're locked in. Great intro to the romantic suspense genre, which then you dive straight into Juniper Hill, which follows our MMC Griffin from the first book's brother, Knox. Knox is a chef at the local hotel that their family owns. And he kind of lives in this secluded area called Juniper Hill. He likes being away from everybody, from the hustle and bustle, the isolation of it all. But his sister, Eloise, owns the Eloise Inn, where his restaurant is located, and she has hired a extremely overqualified member of her staff who will be moving in from out of town to be on their team, and she cannot find a place to live. So Eloise convinces Knox to allow Memphis to move into his apartment over his garage. Memphis is a single mom, and guys, I love this. Knox is so grumpy that they are there, truly so grumpy about it and having people in his space, but he falls both for Memphis and her little boy, so much so that there's a very popular line that circulates in the bookish online community where they're talking about their kids at a family dinner, and Griffin is like, mine is like this, like my kid is like this, and Knox is like, not mine. And everyone's like, what? Because he's like claiming this sweet boy as his own. There's a suspense element to this book as well. Check your trigger warnings. Next up is Garnet Flats. Garnet Flats is very polarizing. So polarizing, in fact, that I skipped this book because I wasn't sure I would be into it. But I was so wrong. And I'm so glad I came back to it. MMC is a boxer and our FNC is a doctor. And they were together in college, and he abruptly ended things for a reason. You'll find out why, but he has returned to her life the second he can. I am talking groveling. I am talking man obsessed. Now, the reason that he left her in college is what the debate about this book is on. And it really did rub some people the wrong way. It did not rub me the wrong way. So if you're a casual reader that doesn't get angered very easily, I would just actually read the reviews on Goodreads or wherever you get your reading reviews, because that'll give you good insight into what the conflict is if you want to go in less than blind. But the groveling begins. He is a dad, so his daughter is now in town as well, and he is literally in town to be with her. He's training for all of his boxing matches from their town. I loved Garnet Flats. Now, our MMC in that book's trainer is the MMC in Jasper Vale, and yet again, an accidental Vegas wedding with Eloise, the owner of the Eloise Inn, and all of these have suspense elements in them, so fear not, keep that in mind, but they accidentally got married in Vegas while they were under the influence, and what happens is Eloise's family is already wondering if she's fit to run this family family business, and she does not want them to think that she's reckless. And so she and our MMC decide to stay married, at least for a little bit, so that her family takes them seriously. And that is where this story comes from. These last two I do not recommend reading out of order or as standalones because the stories are so beautifully interconnected. I cannot recommend this duet enough. First, it's going to be Crimson River. Follows Lila, our coffee shop owner, and a former police officer. Well, he's a police officer, but he specializes in outdoor things. Please forgive me. Again, I'm off the top of the dome here. And he is in town investigating a crime that was committed against Lila, our FMC, because it is consistent with his former partners. Partner as in partner, police partner, who has gone off the grid after the death of his family. And his former partner is a absolute top-notch outdoorsman to the point where our MMC believes that he is living off the land. He is living in the wilderness, running from the law. So that is what that book is about. You're going to want to skip ahead a few minutes if you do not want a spoiler for who the leads are in Sable Peak. I'm going to give you a minute. Sable Peak follows our MMC from Crimson River's police partner's daughter, who is not actually dead. She's in fact alive, and she is living off the land with her dad. She returns to civilization with our MMC from Crimson River. Her name is Vera, and she is everything to me. She's everything to me. This book is such a Roman Empire book for me. I think about it. I am not kidding every day. I love this book so much, and it is broken up beautifully. So our MMC Mateo is a pilot and a single dad. He was throughout this series, he moved to Alaska to be a pilot out there. He since returned home, but then found out he has a daughter, and the daughter comes home with him. So he's a young single dad, and he and Vera form a friendship. And over the course of a few years, this is part 1 of this book, and it's maybe the first 25% is them forming this friendship and Vera falling for him. Now, as you can imagine, Vera has been through a lot, and the family treats her as such to an extent. But she has reacclimated to society so well, and she falls for Mateo. And finally it comes to a head where he's flirting with someone else, and she goes up to him and she's like, "Why don't you see me? What about me? Why won't you see me? For anything more than a friend. I have such significant feelings for you, and you don't see me." And he's like, "You know what? You're so right. And I'm so wrong. Why did I never see you?" It is beautiful. It is so beautiful. It is so well done. I love their story. I love the way that it is done. I love Vera's character development. So phenomenal. Please read The Edens if you have not yet. There's suspense elements of each and every one of these. So if you're trying to get into that subgenre, this is the place to do that. The last book series I recommend to every single romance readers is, of course, A Court of Thorns and Roses. There's a lot of discourse on this book series, so I don't think I need to go into it too deeply, but the reason I always recommend this, A Court of Thorns and Roses, is an extremely accessible romantasy series for romance readers. It is a great introduction to fantasy to someone who is used to reading contemporary romance. They will tell you you need to get through the red book to get to the green book. If you are going to read the series, all I'm going to say is you need to commit to the first 2 books. A Court of Thorns and Roses, the red book, is a lot of world building, is a lot of getting into it, but the thing that makes this series so widely beloved is the second book, A Court of Mist and Fury. So if you're going to commit to reading A Court of Thorns and Roses, you need to also commit to reading A Court of Mist and Fury. This is a romantasy series about a fae realm and how it mixes with the human realm. And there's the politics of the fae realm versus the human realm. And it really is fascinating. Magic systems, of course. Everything is not as it seems. Book 1 is actually Beauty and the Beast retelling. A Court of Thorns and Roses is that girl for a reason. Am I claiming that it's the best fantasy series of all time? No. But what I am claiming is that it is such a great entry point into the genre and to many people back into reading as an adult. So, highly recommend A Court of Thorns and Roses. That wraps it up for my big 5. I also mentioned Lost and Found. That's Catherine Cowles. This is the best of the best when it comes to romantic suspense, in my opinion. I feel like The Edens is the better introduction to romantic suspense, but if you're looking for true hard-hitting suspense mixed with really, really lovely romance, Lost and Found is going to be the series for you. Boys of Tommen. I'm going to have to do an entire other episode on this. It does follow a high school rugby team. It is very heavy. There are very, very adult topics in this. And I think what turns people off of it, and I didn't want to read it because it followed high schoolers. And I was like, absolutely not. I was wrong. Okay? So we're going to talk about it in a different episode. But Boys of Tommen, Rebel Blue Ranch, Lila Sage. This is another cowboy romance series. This is set in Wyoming, and these are very short and sweet. So much so that I almost wish they were longer, actually. I love these stories. So if you like Chestnut Springs and are looking for somewhere else to go, Rebel Blue Ranch is a great place to land. And then last but not least is the Empyrean series. That's going to be Fourth Wing, Iron Flame, Onyx Storm. This is another great introduction for romance readers into the world of fantasy reading. This is not fae. This is actually a world in which dragons and powers and signets exist, and it is about a war college where students can enter one of 4 areas of study, if you will, but the one that is followed in the series is the Rider Squadron. The Riders ride dragons, and that is where you will hear a dragon without its rider is a tragedy, a rider without its dragon is dead. Welcome to the Fourth Wing. I'm going to be doing an entire other episode on the Empyrean series, so we'll get to that eventually, but those are the big 5. I am happy to do entire episodes on any of these that I've listed where we go into true depth about them. I would love that. If that is something y'all would be interested in, holler. And we can do a true book club on these series or even a particular book. But I wanted to chat today about a great place to get into romance, get back into reading as an adult, or just really some of the best when it comes to romance series. So I think that's going to wrap it up for book club today. I have been talking for way too long, but it has truly been a blast. Have you read these series yet? Let me know. I would love to know. Thank you as always for hanging out with me, for attending book club. Now, book club attendance is mandatory, so not that you had much of a choice. Thank you very much for spending this time with me, and I will see you in the next one.